today is joining us the owners of Pella. I've got Ed Engelbrecht and Peter Martin. Thanks, guys, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
Great to be here, Mark.
All right. Well, we'll kind of jump right into it. I thought maybe each one of you guys could give us a little intro of kind of your background. I obviously know Ed because we've worked with you and your wife on a couple of your homes, and so you and I have known each other for a long time. And Peter, since you've bought into Pella here and you're partners with Ed, and we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, but I know your history a little bit less than I know Ed's. So why don't you kick it off and just give us kind of a brief overview of your career to where you are now.
How much time we have?
Well, this is going to be a 7-part podcast series.
Okay, good. So. Perfect. Most recently, I was with Cambria. So I've been in the building materials category and industry for about 15 years now. Started off at the University of Minnesota, got my first job out of college in finance. So I was in working with Piper Jaffray and then in banking. Through a couple of mergers, ended up working for the Pollad family, and then transitioned over to the Minnesota Twins. So spent some time in the entertainment industry with them and worked on their new stadium effort. We got that approved, and then I was anxious to get back into corporate America, and so had the chance to meet the Davis family through the connection and support that they gave to the Minnesota Twins, and they were starting Cambria, and so I went over in a sales and marketing capacity and spent 12 years with the family and with Cambria, and then we also purchased Sun Country Airlines when I was there, and so I had the chance to be on the board of directors and work with the crew over there, and we sold the airline, and I was ready to do something new and fresh, and that really lit an entrepreneurial spirit in me, and so I looked at the next 15 years of my career, and I wanted to get into ownership, and so through networking and some of the people that I know, I get introduced to Ed. He was starting to work on his transition plan and was looking for the next leader and owner of his business, and we just really gelled, and so bought into the business about 3 years ago, and here I am.
Here you are.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You definitely have played in the big leagues. Early on, did you know that you wanted to have an entrepreneurial career? I mean, even as a younger person, or at what point did that kind of transition? As you saw other ownerships like the Davises and other, like, hey, wow, we've had a lot of success. I mean, your companies were massive, right? You took Cambria from, what was it, 50 million to like 500 million?
Yeah. It was like 35, and we grew it to 650 million. I'm sure they're got to be approaching 800-900 million now, and so we just had really exponential growth, and it was a fun time. It's a really good question because I know Mark, I think for you, and you'll probably talk about it, but you kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit from the very beginning, and it really grew for me over time. I think part of it was being with the Pollad family. All the businesses they have are privately held, and then working with the Davises and just having the opportunity to work in that very entrepreneurial environment. They've got 4 or 5 different businesses, from cheese making to dairy cows that they have big corporate operations in. Our foray with Sun Country that we bought and sold 6 years later, very profitably, and then just the growth of Cambria. That really is where I think that seed started to maturate and to grow for me. And as I looked at the next phase of my career, through a lot of the relationships and the distribution network that we had built at Cambria, my wife and I had talked many times about being on the other side of that table. And so, again, as I looked at the last phase of my career, it was something that I wanted to do for myself. And that motivation, Mark, wasn't all money. Yes, as you look at the success, if we can say that, we were always sheepish to say that when we were at a Cambria, because we were building for success, but we certainly had some success along the way. But for me, as I thought about that next phase of my career, it was really about culture and having that more autonomy to be able to impact and influence and build a culture and to be part of a team that I had more control over. And then certainly looking at that last phase of your career and how do I build wealth for the future and for retirement. So, and
I would imagine we'll touch on this a little bit later of what attracted you to Ed and to Pella, here regionally with Pella Northland. But just also, I can only imagine having the diverse background that you've had. Take kind of saying, hey, that worked, that didn't work, and then from all these different companies, from huge companies, boiling it down now, trying to take it to kind of to Pella and seeing where you can actually impact the culture. We'll get into that a little bit. Ed, why don't you? Yeah, how's it going, man?
It's going great. You?
I love having you in here. The idea that you do a podcast and not be in person seems strange to me. I'd much rather look at you face to face so I can hit you and if I have to. But anyway, you're a good guest so far. How we'll see. There's still time to mess it up.
There is.
Tell us a little bit about your history. I mean, obviously, I've known you for a long time, but there are people that'll listen to this podcast that don't know you. So why don't you give a brief intro of kind of your history?
Sounds good. Well, since you've worked with Carla and I on a couple projects, you know who the real boss is, right?
I do.
Who the decision maker is, right?
Sure do.
Yeah. Well,
maybe I should have had her on.
You should. She knows you well. Ed Engelbrecht. A little different path than Peter. I came out of college and went right into Pella Corp and worked for Pella Corp for 29 years. I had 12 different positions. Started in finance and then customer service and marketing and sales and sales management. And then in that span, I got to run both Northern Illinois as the general manager and Minneapolis branch. So that's where I really became to love the opportunity to run a branch. And then the last 10 years, I was the head of sales at Pella Corporation. So I learned a lot at Pella, a lot of people skills, process skills, things like that. But in my last 10 years, I saw a lot of the distribution and distribution management. And that's where I got the bug of owning my own business. I thought that would be really good. I think the motivation, somewhat similar to Peter, it's the flexibility. Corporate life, I think I can say it online, sucks. It's a drain. I have huge respect for corporate people. I think they're insane, that the lifestyle, work-life balance is not there at all. But to be able to control your schedule and the flexibility and be closer to customers is something that I really desired, and control your own destiny. And having that opportunity, even though I was working for Pella as a general manager, I saw that path and said, I need to do this. And I love Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. I love the weather up here and the opportunities outdoors, right? So it just all worked out. And in 2011, bought this branch from Pella Corp, and it includes the territory of Minnesota and a good chunk of Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota. So it's a great market. And as Peter mentioned, about 3 years ago, we connected. And now we're working on my transition and Peter's transition.
Yeah,
so.
I'd love to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Tell me a little bit more. I mean, I can tell you, like, just looking on, you've in some ways been kind of a quasi-mentor. I mean, I look at someone who's established, older. I mean, some of your greatest attributes are, you're calm, you're classy, very collected. I can imagine that, being essentially the owner of a company, as you get the ups and downs of, economies, right? You bought it in 2008. That's coming. I'd be curious. You bought it right after the crash. So home sales are plummeting in 2011, and you bought a window company. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Some people thought I was crazy, insane, and all that. But, I think the housing market, there's always going to be a demand, even on the replacement remodel.
Yes.
Even when single-family new goes down, it's a cyclical business. We also have the advantage we do commercial work. And so I had full confidence that we had the opportunity to continue to grow in this market. As far as being calm, I have a saying, small things bother small people. Some people like that. Some people don't.
I like that.
You sound like my wife.
Yep.
You're a big remodel, Peter.
I know. Trust me.
Yeah. You got to make a mess to get where you want to go. You control what you can control. And I really think, when I think about a business, any business, you need three things. You need great people, great processes, and great product. And if you have all three of those, you will satisfy customers. And we certainly have great people. That is a differentiator, I truly believe. And then if you don't have process, they say you have chaos. If you need heroes, you do not have good processes. And then, of course, products, come into services. Certainly, Mark, with the quality homes that you build, all about that, of the vendors that provide great products and great services. And so that's, if you have that, I think in any business you have confidence that you will do well. And the other thing to think through is, even though the market might go down, there's always market share to take. Mm-hmm. And if you do well, you will take share. So I don't think we need the market to grow for us to grow, or a business doesn't need a market to grow for the business to grow.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I'm an avid athlete, so I do a lot of competition, and I'm just a very competitive person. And so it's funny, when things were slow, I used to always think, like, I don't have to be the best builder or the best in my market. Well, yeah, I just have to beat the competition. I guess that's how I phrased it in my own head. Right. And so, like, if that person is doing that, can I do it better? Yes, I can. So let's do that. And so, kind of, I think just doing the 1% things, right? And I think you kind of already said it. If I can do, one good thing, do that, and then start on the next one. Some people might not know this. Maybe you could expound a little bit on this, but because a lot of times people associate a big company with unknown brand, right? And I've had this extreme privilege to know the owners and have a personal relationship with both of you, which is extremely valuable. I talk about it all the time outside of even work. Just it's really unique, and maybe it's not unique. Maybe every builder you treat this way. If so, kudos to you. You guys are amazing. But it's really neat to see. But not all Pella branches are owned by Pella Corporate. Can you talk us a little bit through that? Because throughout the country, people would assume the brand of Pella, which you obviously have a very close symbiotic relationship with. But tell us a little bit more about, like, Pella Northland and how it exists within the Pella corporate structure.
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's about 60 Pella distributorships around the country. About 10 of them are corporate owned. The other 50 are independently owned. We go to market very unique. Most of our competition, two steps or go through dealers or lumber yards. We go direct, and we feel, with the right people, we can provide the expertise. This is all we do. We're window and door geeks. we know a lot. We may not know a lot about other things,
sure,
but try to stump us on windows and doors, right? And that would be a good podcast, maybe.
Yeah. All right, we'll bring on guest questions.
Right,
how to stump you. I like that.
Right. So in this market, way back in the 90s, this used to be independently owned, and then Pella Corp bought it in 97. I was the first general manager up here from 97 to 2000, and then Pella owned it from 97 until I bought it again in 2011. So the markets might switch back and forth to Pella Corporation ownership, but I do believe independent ownership is the best. You can make quicker decisions.
Yeah.
You have the relationships that maybe some of the company-owned stores don't have, and don't have the flexibility. So,
is that when you kind of mentioned before early on of wanting to own your own company or to essentially be an entrepreneur? You kind of have the best of both worlds. Is that true? Like, you are an entrepreneur in the fact that you own your company, you can make decisions on a quicker basis, versus a corporate. I don't know what the strat is. I only would know biases of stereotypes of how long it takes to get things passed.
It's frustrating to get things passed.
In corporate.
Almost as bad as the government, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
It's different levels. So if there are 10 company-owned distribution networks, all of them have to agree on whatever it is.
Right.
And you can't get anybody to agree.
That does sound arduous.
It is.
I also do not think. I've often, you guys both told your stories, and I can just sum up mine quickly. I mean, I had a lawn mowing business in high school, and someone will pay me to mow their yard. That sounds great. So that's what I did through college, sold my business. I never worked for anybody. The classic joke of entrepreneurship is that, nobody would hire us, so we had to start our own business. I often wonder, especially the last couple of years with COVID, how difficult it's been managing everything. There is every once in a while when I've had a rough week or a rough month or a year, I'll be like, man, how would I do in corporate? And I honestly think about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know how long I would last. I actually kind of want to do it just to see if I can do it for like a week and see. I'm like, oh yeah, nope. I guess the freedom that I do have and do enjoy, well, it comes with a lot of difficulties. I think people often will look on, hey, you own a business, you must be made in the shade, you can do whatever you want, which obviously we know is not true. There's a ton of work that goes into it, relationships, and we've all had up and downs in our careers, and your evolution is kind of amazing. We just celebrated 17 years. You look back and you're like, wow, I cannot I mean, you never start out with the end in mind, or at least I didn't, and I had no idea I was going to be doing high-end homes. I mean, I think the first home I ever built was, $500,000, $600,000, which again at the time was no small thing. It was still a really nice home, I mean, especially your first house, right?
I just saw it. You just posted it.
I just posted a story.
I thought it was the coolest thing to see. You were kind of going back in time, and you're walking down the street and saying, "This is the first house," and look at the size of the trees, and it was really cool.
That evergreen tree was massive. Yeah. So I had a little time between meetings, so I went in front of this house that I built, and that is something that's very valuable about, I guess, building homes. Is it's I have 3 kids now, so to bring the kids through a neighborhood that we built 17 years ago, and we built that house with a team of people. That is something that's really special about building, and it's so tied into the fabric of quote the American dream. You hear about home ownership. And it's really important. I know you guys are both on committees with Minnesota Housing First, and they do a great job of celebrating that message, and we can get into that a little bit later. But just really talking about our history, I guess, of how we get to where we are. It's funny how people come along at a right time and make an impact on us that, changes our career to a different arc path. And, for you had so many different companies maybe, and I'm sure there are special people in those companies that acted as mentors for you, Peter, that kind of directed you. How would you say that being at these other companies, how have they fit you now into ownership of your own country or company and shaped you in a way that you maybe wouldn't have been otherwise?
Yeah, right. Both of your paths were a little straighter, and right, there's the old saying, and it's Christian based, but it's God writes straight through crooked lines, right? And I look back at my career, and it was very crooked. The Twins is a big brand and a popular place to work and to be. And people used to always ask me, how'd you get hired by the Minnesota Twins? And I totally fell into it, you guys, right? I was working in financial services, and the Pollad family sold that business to Wells Fargo. And I was like, I'm not going back to banking. And so just through connections, got there. But back to your question about, mentors. Yeah, you run into a lot of different personalities along the way. And you try to take the good and leave the bad. Sometimes you end up modeling the bad because that's the culture and the environment you're in, and you try to learn from those things along the way. I think one of the greatest people I worked with and learned from was Dave St. Peter at the Minnesota Twins. He's still there. He's the president, CEO, and just a tremendous, tremendous leader. He was a guy that outworked everybody in the organization, was willing to roll up his sleeves and get involved in all aspects of the business. A guy that would walk around the concourse and talk to fans. If we had to hand out giveaways at the gates, was there doing that, and that was it was a really inspiring kind of, individual to work under. So, I just have a lot of gratitude for the opportunity that he gave me and the culture that they built there. It was a really fun place to work. When we talk, not this is cliche now, right? People say, our business is like a family. And that was the one place where we absolutely were a family because we worked like 24/7. We had 10, 12 game home stands. We were there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Games are over at 10, 11:30 at night. We were truly a family, but I only did it for 6 years because you just get burned out. It's just a really hard industry to work in.
Did you have a family at that time?
I did. I've been married probably maybe 8 or 9 years. We had our daughter, Greta. She's 18 now, but I remember Kirby Puckett died. We came back from spring training. My wife and daughter were here, and we were in the middle of spring training, so the team flew back. We did a big memorial service. It was televised here locally, and there was a huge winter storm that night. And I came home, and my wife was sitting up with my daughter, and it was 11 o'clock at night, and she just said to me, "Peter, I can't do this anymore. I need you to find another job. You're never home." And she was absolutely right. It was the best thing that she could have done. It was, I left a lot of friends behind there, and I learned a lot from that place. But happily celebrating 25 years of marriage, right. And I don't think we would have survived that if I would have stayed. Kind of, to Ed's point. That grind of corporate America is really hard.
I'm kind of curious because I've never been in any sort of corporate setting other than essentially what pop culture teaches me or hearing your stories. What do you think has led to that, or why is it that way? And, people talk about culture. They talk about, and be very curious to have someone on who is in a corporate setting and they maybe do have a positive culture. But why is it that it has to be that way? I mean, you might have some more insight on that versus, because it's not like Pella Northland is that small of a company either. Like, how big is your company?
Yeah, I mean, we'll do $75 million top line.
How many people
with
will you employ?
130 employees?
Yeah, I mean, that's still. So do you take? I mean, how do you avoid the pitfalls of that? Because I'm sure, a bigger company like the Twins, or let's say you started as a farm ball team, like, you start small, and before you know it, you've created this, kind of this big behemoth, and the culture kind of almost takes care of itself. I guess what Ed had said that I really like, that if you don't have a process, it becomes chaos. Mm-hmm. And so do you think that corporate America becomes chaos because the process isn't linear or clean, or why is it that that you hear that so often?
I'll take a stab at that. I think it is the culture and what the priorities are. And I think too many companies are driven by profitability only, mm-hmm. and certainly the public companies a quarterly basis. So, they have to make money, and they make some short-term decisions. When we own our own business, we can make long-term decisions. And, culture is a big deal. And, the old saying, culture trumps strategy. You really need to think about whether Peter was talking about the family culture that you want. But corporate, I think it's a grind because they always are trying to make more money.
Right.
And I think that's there's other priorities. And I think the culture, to me, you think about the values first, mm-hmm. and then how you want the company to be run. And then above everything else, how do you measure success?
Right.
And it's profit's important, but so is growth, so is customer satisfaction and employee engagement. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just the laser focus that makes corporate life such a grind, just profit, profit, profit.
I feel like we have a quote book over here. I'm writing down like your quote machines. I'm gonna have to start a new book. Those are some pretty impactful things you've learned over your career.
Yeah. Have been in many meetings at corporate.
Doodling? Like, what are you doing in these meetings?
I'm taking down these quotes.
Oh, I see. See, that's even better. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, wow, that's amazing.
I think one other thing, Peter talked about one of his best mentors. Mine was a guy named Gary Christensen, a CEO. He came from GE, and he hated that culture, and he wanted a different culture. But one of the things he brought was appreciation. And I think there's a big difference between recognition and appreciation. If you appreciate people, and it's the small things, Peter, you do that well too, going around and just sharing a friendly hello and how's your day, versus recognition. You think you deserve recognition, but everybody deserves appreciation. And at corporate, I think they don't appreciate their talent as much as individuals, mm-hmm. maybe as positions and what that individual can do for them. But you really have to appreciate your people as individuals.
That's interesting. Someone had, I forget where I learned this, but every Friday I write 2 thank you cards. And, there's no money involved. There's nothing like that. It's just really thanking someone for going above and beyond for something that they do. And I did that because, and I think we've learned so much from being married and having kids. You talked about how your wife, helped you kind of realize at that moment in time, we need these check-ins because we get so focused on whatever it is we're working on to kind of say, okay, you need to zero it back in. And that helps you. It makes you a better person, makes you a better leader, and all those kinds of things. And I feel like, well, I know for myself, you could always do a better job of what you're talking about, of appreciating people. And I've heard recently that the reason people leave, this will transition into my next question for you guys, of how you retain or how you hire people and retain people. But I've heard that people, I think on the list of why people leave, money is like 3rd or 4th. It's recognition, it's appreciation, probably should be above recognition. It's, how they feel valued in the culture, and really their work-life balance. I know it's a kind of a millennial hot topic. There's plenty of spoofs and SNL skits about people not wanting to work at all. I think you can have a work-life balance, but something does have to give. I mean, you can't do everything, and I speak about this because I do try to do everything. And mm-hmm. I think my wife has definitely helped me prioritize things, and we can talk a little bit maybe about little life hacks that we've enjoyed over the years that have helped us. I mean, Ed, your kids are obviously much older. You have grandkids now, or Peter, I have young kids, and Peter has middle-aged kids, and so it's interesting how you take being a parent and a husband, and you apply a lot of these principles to work and to a business. Would you feel that way, that when you sometimes are faced with a decision, you often think about it almost paternally?
Yeah, for sure. Especially as an owner, right? It's very different. And I think that kind of gets to Ed's point when we were talking about what's different about corporate America versus our businesses, is that I feel in some cases corporate America people are expendable. I mean, they are, and I don't mean to beat up on it. I think corporate America continues to try to evolve and be more employee friendly, but that drive and demand for a 90-day dividend, forces them to be focused more on profit, as Ed said, maybe versus the individual. And the big mindset for me that I think has shifted as an individual is that care of the individual, and the flexibility that we have as owners to help our people, to go above and beyond perhaps what they were expecting, and B, what's typically allowed in a larger organization, because you've got a strict set of HR policies that you have to follow. And our HR policy is us. It's what we determine it to be. That's
amazing. I mean, it's funny. I don't obviously have an HR department, and so sometimes I'm like, man, if I did, I wonder.
You are.
Yeah,
HR.
I guess I am. Wow, my HR department is very lax. Yeah, no, that's so. Going to that question. How do you hire people? What's your process, and how do you keep people? How do you? I'd be curious to know. While you're not corporate, from the sense that you guys say you're not corporate, from a company like us where I have 5 people, for to 170 that you're at. Walk me through a little bit about how you hire people and how you retain them.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump on that. I guess I think it's a twofold question, obviously, and hiring. I absolutely think that the best way to hire people is to be networked in the marketplace. We can hire recruiters. You can hire an HR team to go do your recruiting for you. I tell our managers and our people all the time that their job is not. Or that the job to recruit and to find people is not HR. If we find someone through HR, great, that's fine, that's gravy. But their job is to be out in the marketplace, networking and identifying individuals that would be good fits for our business. And so, I think the best and only way to do that is through networking. I met Ed, and I make it a practice every single week. I'm out doing a networking coffee, lunch, happy hour, whatever it is. In some cases with somebody I've never met before, but also with that network that I have that goes back 20 years, like we all have, and making sure that you maintain those relationships that have formed in the past as you go forward, I think is really important too, because those can be great referrals for you as you move forward.
I'm curious, do you time block that? Like, hey, every Thursday from 11 to 1, I try to make that? Or how do you fit that into your busy schedule?
It's a good question. I wish that I did. I just make it, it's just an inherent thing in my head that literally every week I think about, have I done that? Who did I meet with? What have I done to maintain, that? Because there is just so much flexibility you have to have. I wish I could say every Thursday at, 7:30, I'm going to do a coffee. I'm not that disciplined, partly just because of the way people's schedules are. But I think that's, I think it's an important habit, and it's certainly something that over the course of my career where I've got busy that I got away from. And as I have been at, Pella, I just wear a different hat as an owner and an operator. And so maintaining those relationships is really important. And that has to be our best feeder to our business. And in my opinion, we're not perfect. I mean, it's a tough market out there, right now. But I think that networking is absolutely the most important way to recruit good people.
And maybe you can answer the question of how do you keep them once you have them?
Yeah, well, in addition to finding the people, then how do you screen them? And we do profile testing, we do panel interviews. So you're looking
for everyone
for the soft side. Yeah, we're looking for the culture, and that's a tough thing. If you hire right, hopefully they'll stay longer.
Yeah,
but I think how you retain team members, it's the culture. It is. It's one, I think you have to have a common goal. You have to be able to share in the success of the company. And by that, I mean with benefits, obviously compensation, but healthcare, all that stuff needs to be there. We have a profit sharing program. But then we have fun stuff too. We have everything from a Friday, what do we call that? Friday, hello, Friday.
Yeah,
little
to have a good
Good Friday weekend. Just little stuff to annual boat rides, Lake Minnetonka and things like that.
Yep. That's more along the lines of appreciation. Right?
Yeah, and I think that helps with retention. That this is more than just you need to do your job.
Right.
We care about you. Hopefully, you care about us. And what can we do for you?
Right.
I think, Mark, this is a huge topic, right, and a huge issue. And Ed and I talk a lot about this because you're right. Like, we can do the boat cruises. We can do them every month if that's what it just took to build a great culture. I always say, I'll buy as many ping pong tables and foosball tables as we need if that's what's really going to make people happy and stay. At the end of the day, the real challenge with culture is those intangibles. It's that feeling within the organization. Do people feel cared about? Are they treated with respect? We are a culture of servant leadership, and again, that can be cliche, but I think we've taken it one step further, and it's about our culture, our environment, and our business is going to be one of we'll be firm, but we're going to be friendly and fair with our employees, and that absolutely starts with us, and that permeates down through the organization. I always say when I do orientation with employees, I'm like, this is not an organization where you're going to be yelled at. This is not an organization where we cuss and swear. It's not a prudish thing for me. I've worked in those environments, and it was absolutely what I wanted to leave behind and was not going to have, moving forward. And I was fortunate because when you're buying a business, you don't necessarily know what that culture is because you're not working in it day in and a day out. And I got really lucky because Ed and the team there had built such a strong culture of respect, of appreciation, and of servant leadership. And that just resonated with me when I came in the door.
Well, Ed, this is a big compliment, but you're one of the classiest individuals that I've come across. And, I thank you, Carla, for raising me.
She trained me well.
She trained you well. But I can say, a big part of building a home, because it's such an emotional journey, it's somewhat, I would assume, analogous to building a company in that you spend a lot of time with people. And you get to know their families. Obviously, you get to know what's important. But as you transition into to having employees and keeping them happy, they're really. I don't even like the word employees. I mean, I never liked it when someone says I work for you. I always correct them. I say, no, we work together and with. I can't stand this idea of, because I often will say, I mean, I can't. I actually almost always say this in my first interview with a client. Hold up my hands and they have calluses, but they're from tennis and weightlifting. and I said, if you see me on a job site, call 911 or call. Something has gone drastically wrong, because that's not my skill set. And I am so fortunate to be surrounded by these amazing craftsmen, amazing trade partners, people that help us, be what we are in the marketplace. But really, it's highlighting them. And I love, we do this thing every Thursday, right? That's called Thank You Thursdays. And so we'll do a photo of a guy in the field, maybe he's laying the wood floor, maybe he's painting, whatever it is. They're not usually the heads of the company. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that, but it's going back to your appreciation thing. And I got a call from someone at Alpine Hardwood. We took a photo of one of his guys, and he called me. I got kind of emotional about it. And he just said, he goes, you don't know what he's been struggling with. He's a very shy, introverted individual, much like the three of us. And and anyway, but he said he's been showing that to everybody, his girlfriend, his brothers and sisters, and it came along at a time where he needed a boost of self-confidence. I didn't know that. I would never know that. And so, but this idea of celebrating the smallest thing on a job site. I mean, I like clean job sites, and they're never clean. And so it's like, man, if I ever see someone clean something up, you better believe you're going to get rewarded some way, somehow, because it's those little things that ultimately make you a better company in perception. I have a big thing on signs. Every time I drive by one of my job signs and I see dirt on it, I'll take a picture of it and send it to the project manager. I'm like, really? I have 2 hot buttons. The location of the porta potty in relationship to my sign. They're actually one thing. Yep. Don't put something ugly in front of my sign, and my sign better be clean. That's pretty much it. That's about it.
I've got a great story on that too, Mark, because it relates to you, which was we were installing a big multi-panel door, and we had our crew out there, and you filmed it. and you put it on social media. But the one thing is you gave hats and T-shirts to our guys.
Oh, yeah.
And they still wear them, but they came and they were so proud of those hats. And then it'll never fail. And you can tell this other builder this story, but it never fails. Well, we have a uniform policy. We didn't tell them that they can't wear Mark D. Williams hats.
They told me.
Oh,
I'll tell you my side of the story when I'm done.
Okay, go ahead.
You finish.
So a week later, they're out on a Kramer and Sons job site, and I get the phone call that they cannot believe that we are at a John Kramer and Sons job site doing work wearing another builder's hat.
Was it the PM or was it John or Gary? You can't say. Okay. Because I got a good story for that. Okay, keep going.
No, go ahead.
So what did you say?
I didn't really say that. I say, yeah, thanks for the feedback. Mark's a great partner. We aren't trying to show, you guys up. They were just out on a job site. He gave them, hats and, they appreciated. They'd be happy to take one from you. And it was, it was the PM.
Yeah. Okay. I figured, because I have seen many John Kramer, my tree guy has a hard hat, and I took a picture of it and sent it to John. I'd be like, hey, if he's on my job site, will you pay his bill?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, you're installers. That's funny. So we just made some new swag and some new shirts and new hats, and your guys showed up that day to do that bifold door. And as everyone knows, just windows have been like a lot of things just been delayed. So we were so excited, and I had all this stuff walking up to the house. I'm like, hey, you guys want hats and shirts to commemorate this special moment? And they're like, oh, sorry, sir, it's against our company policy. I'm like, okay.
Golden, we're going to do it.
First of all, that sounds very corporate America to me. So I'm going to rebel against that. I said, here's the deal. You wear all of these on my job sites anytime. You can wear them out to date night, dinner. I don't care where you wear them. And if you don't want to wear them on another job site, that's fine, but I encourage you to do so. And I said, if anyone has an issue with this, why don't you tell Ed and Peter that I gave them to you? And they're all cracking up and laughing. And so I'm glad to know they got a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
That's funny.
It's like giving a little kid a Swiss Army knife and telling him not to cut himself. It's going to happen.
But they absolutely loved it. I mean, that was like, you would have thought it was Christmas for them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really.
I mean,
they
it's
just
little
appreciate
stuff, right?
That's what I mean.
It
It's just the little things.
Now I got to start a clothing vendor company and just hand them out to everyone. I do like that stuff. I mean, it's funny because you do the things that you like to do, right? I mean, I think this is basic human psychology, that we procrastinate on the things that we don't want to do. I've been trying for myself to try to embody the touch it once rule in my emails, which is a challenge, right? You tend to do the easy emails first and like, okay, I read that one twice. I'll get back to that another day. But it's really hard, and you try to tell your team to also do it. You're just more efficient, right? So, well, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this transition process works? Mainly, it's just very fascinating. Like, Ed, when did you know, how do you sell a company like Pella? And Peter, for your part, like, how many other companies did you look at? And walk me through this process. I'm fascinated to know the answer to this.
Yeah, well, it's something you usually only do once. And so, I saw a lot of transitions when I was head of sales at Pella. I probably saw 20 transitions. So I learned a lot there. I think the big difference in our deal, it was a transition versus a transaction, and we talk a lot about that. And what I mean by that is I wanted to stay on for several years, and I think Peter saw the advantage of that as well. So instead of selling your business and just handing over the keys, good luck.
Right.
Here, let's do this together. But the tough thing is to find your new partner and who you're selling it to. That is not easy. As Peter mentioned, we did it through networking. You can do it through a broker. You can do it through other recruiters. But I think the networking is probably the best because you do business with people you know and trust. And obviously the person that Peter and I knew mutually, we respected, and so I valued his opinion.
Yeah.
He said, you should meet this guy. I know you want to sell your business.
Was that pretty low on the radar? I mean, how long had you been kind of thinking about selling it?
No,
how many people even knew that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It took me probably 3 years before Peter and I did our deal, and 2 years before I met Peter. So when I met Peter, we had several conversations on for about a year, just getting to know each other. And I was doing a parallel. I had a couple other candidates that were interested in buying the business as well. But prior to that, just getting the business ready to sell, getting candidates that you would want to buy the business. And then with Mother Pella, they have say in who can.
Mother Pella?
And Mother Pella.
That's funny.
I think I can say that, right?
Yeah, you can say Mother Pella. Sure.
I'd left the other word out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something you do only once. There's some great books that you can pick up. There's different steps, but one of the things that owners need to think about when they transition is what they want to do after they sell their business. And I was very fortunate to have a few hobbies, golf, hunt, fish occasionally. And but I also like to help other individuals either sell or buy Pella branches. So I've got a consulting business. I'm doing that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so I work.
How long have you had that?
It's probably been 4 or 5 years now that
That's
I've
amazing.
helped others. I'm involved with 3 deals right now, and so that also gives me a backstop after Peter's done putting up with me.
Talk about a unique background, though. I mean, having been with Pella for your entire career in different avenues and then owning it. I mean, wow, that sounds like you could have no competition in that world. I mean, you're the godfather of brokers in Pella.
I feel that old too, Mark. So, I think to your point, you do things that you're good at and you enjoy. And I think the older you get, when opportunities come, you have to either say heck yes or heck no.
Yeah.
Don't say maybe.
Right.
And too many times I've said maybe to be on a board I really didn't want to be on, and then you're just going through the motions. So, and that gets back to your work-life balance. Do things you enjoy, be with people you enjoy, and don't do things you really don't enjoy.
Yeah.
It seems so simple.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to figure that out.
And it takes discipline too.
Yeah.
And how about for your side, Peter? Your search of, I know you talked a little bit about it, after Cambria, hey, I want to buy a business. I'm getting excited about owning one. Walk me through your search process and how you landed on Pella.
No, I appreciate the question. And it's like God has a plan, and it takes time. It's on his schedule, not yours, right? And so I had looked at several different businesses, had made serious offers on them, only to see them get outbid by private equity by significant multiples. That got me discouraged.
Was that through a broker or through networking? Or
that was through networking.
Okay.
But I also talked to brokers. I mean, I had relationships with 3 or 4 different brokers that are constantly feeding you, deals and opportunities. I spent a lot of time at private equity, networking at private equity firms for businesses that they were looking maybe to get ready to spin off. Et cetera. I think one of the advantages that I had in coming into the Pella system, and I think a really important point of differentiation, is that Pella wants and requires active owner-operators in the business. And so that limits, in some cases, private capital or private equity from coming in. I think, hopefully that'll evolve over some time, but it's a really important part of the model.
That seems really wise to me.
Yeah,
not knowing that much
I would
about it.
agree with
having
you.
a silent partner or someone that just, not that you need people with funding and money to own a business too, but I mean, obviously it just makes sense. If you're the owner operator, you are in touch with your investment. And it seems very wise of Pella to have made that.
Yeah. And so, I'm, like Ed said, I met him, and it's a process. It's a process of approval through Pella. And I had to let Ed work through his process. As he said, he had multiple people that he was interviewing and considering for the business. And just by being patient with that, staying in touch with him, ultimately, for whatever reason, and it ended up being an opportunity that it was okay. Let's try to do this thing.
So it was about a year. Was that right?
It was about a year process for us, and there were some bumps and twists and turns along the way. I know for me, and Ed, I just give you a lot of credit for this. We were probably 2/3 of the way through the process, and at one point, he called me to the house you built for him, and we sat down, and he just said, "We're at the point where you and I just have to trust each other." And at that point, all the anxiety and the whole thing just came out of me, and it was like I just got to let myself go and let this process go. And we've been full bore ever since. Janice and I, my wife and I, talk about we just got really, really lucky.
Right.
Our process, I think, was very different. Ed will tell you we went in front of banks and like they would show up and you could see this weird look in their face and like they were afraid to sit down. I'm not kidding you. Because I think we interviewed 4 different banks, or they interviewed us.
Oh, you mean after you guys came to terms? You
No.
interviewed a bank.
Yeah, well, yeah, yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
so we had terms, and then they were like, we're going to sit down, and we were like, why? And they were like, well, we are never in the room with the seller and the buyer. Like, this is not normal, so what's going on? And it was just because we had a very specific plan around transition, and I felt, and I think Ed felt, that the value in what we were doing together, that it wasn't transactional, it was transitional, and that having Ed at the table and them showing that he and I had a plan over several years to transition the business and work together, I think gave them confidence, right? Ed knew what he was doing, gave me time to come in and be really patient with the business. In hindsight, I didn't realize what a gift that was, because I'm a little more like you, Mark, in terms of personality. I would have been in there, I would have been turning things over and doing this just to see, right, how the organization acted. And that wouldn't have been healthy for it. And so I was able to come in and just be really patient with the process, to learn the business, not make any significant changes in the first year. It was the thing that I committed myself to, was a chance for Ed and I just to work together. It was invaluable with hindsight. And I would tell you, if I would have done it the other way, I think it would have been much too much disruption for the organization.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just thought of an analogy that we have a sailboat, like steady, on tact, and you and I are motorboats or jet
No
skis, and like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's go that way.
Great analogy.
I mean, at least for myself,
I am too.
I mean,
No,
I'm like the bunny. I'm just jumping every which way. I need to surround myself. It's funny, as you look at a team. Well, my team is much smaller than yours. Hiring people that have a different personality. Not everyone on the team could have the same personality, or. Well, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would be the worst pilot, right? Like, I'd be out there in the cockpit. I'd be, what does this button do, and what does that? I mean, the plane would be going like this.
Oh, you mean like when my dad flew the airplane and he got a little nervous about that? That was a memorable moment. Well, just kind of here in closing, tell me a little bit about where you guys see the next couple of years. We're going to have to bring you back on. We didn't even talk about probably what we were going to talk about, just shortages and just navigating the last couple of years of supply and demand. But we'll say that for another time. Tell me a little bit about how do you guys see the next couple of years unfolding as far as the building market, specifically in Minneapolis? Like, what are you guys seeing right now?
Yeah, I'll start. You hear a lot in the media about being in a recession, or we're going into a recession, whatever that means. I think the advantage we have is we have so many subsegments. We have single-family new, and within single-family new, you have entry-level, semi-custom, custom, and luxury. And then in remodeling, replacement, you have quite a few segments in commercial. So I think that it's still, the future looks bright. I think there's all kinds of opportunity. I think the interest rates will slow down the entry-level homes, obviously. But as you know, and certainly as Housing First has explained very well, we have a housing shortage with the number of households.
Oh, man.
You just
like
look,
60,000 units, I'd heard.
You just look at all the apartments going up. There's a lot of households that want to buy. We have an affordability issue at the entry level. So we certainly have challenges, but that it's a healthy economy here. It's a diverse economy here. So I'm optimistic. I also think the downfall of the last housing cycle, we won't go through that again. The conditions were different. There's too many speculations and very little equity in those homes. So I'm pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Peter thinks.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I hate being on tape, right? Because who knows what that future is going to be. But I too am optimistic. I think the fundamentals are very different. I just came back from some Pella Corporate meetings where all the owners were together, along with our sales leaders. And
is this across the country?
It is, yeah. So we had probably 250, 300 people in a room, and they had an economist on who talked very much about the differences between 06, 07, 08, 09. To a now, and we do have a very healthy housing stock. I would tell you in the next 6 months to a year, I think the industry needs a bit of a slowdown and a pause.
Right.
We need to catch up.
Yeah.
We really do. Labor is a challenge for all of us, and I know for you as well. And so I hate to say that a slowdown is coming. I don't know if it is, but it would actually help us in the short term. And I think that the prospects over the next 12 to 18 months are very positive. Ed mentioned the affordability issue. It's a passion of mine. It's so frustrating to be in the industry, and I'm sure you as a builder can relate. Where you just see all of the rules and regulations and other things that drive up the cost of housing, and just recognize that the entry to home ownership for people in entry level homes in this market is nearly impossible. And that has to change. It has to change for the economy because, right, most people's wealth is in their homes across America, and those people deserve the opportunity to have an affordable home. And how we solve that as a state, but as in an industry and at the Capitol it's a very complex issue, but really important.
Yeah, I agree. I know they talk about it at length. I mean, I think maybe a national builder is better equipped with getting their numbers, but I saw a stat that basically in Minnesota Housing First had this on a slide that I saw that basically, the 5-6 states around Minnesota, that same house being built in different locations, it was like $40,000 more in Minnesota than the other states.
We're one of the worst in the country.
Yeah.
As it relates to those rules and regulations. And Mark, we need those people because they got to go into their second homes, and then their second home is probably right where they start to get into your market for that third, home or dream home that those people are building in their 40s and 50s to live in. And so, all that's feeders for the industry moving forward. So,
I think, a balanced market and a balanced sales, you touch base on all the different segments. You guys can do commercial, you can do low, high. I mean, you guys can kind of do everything, which is an amazing diversification. Where are some of the fastest growing portions of your business over the last couple of years?
Well, certainly all of them, quite honestly.
Yeah.
We've grown all of them. Commercial is probably the one that has the biggest cycles. But
what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, you have it's either boom or bust.
I see.
And we have some very good years in commercial, and then maybe the next year you're working through the projects you just sold before you get the next big apartment project. Talk a little bit about the housing stock. Think of how many homes in this market are 20 years or older, and every year there's another batch. And what do they need? Roofing, siding, windows.
Right.
So that is always a consistent growth market.
You had mentioned one of your competitive advantages over other window companies was selling directly. Why is that? Why do the other window brands not adopt your model, or has Pella always had that? No one else has. Like, why is that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. That's where Pella started. That's how they did it. Way back 126 years ago, they were selling roll screens.
Yeah.
They were selling roll screens door to door.
Man, the roll screen that you guys have in your double hung windows is next level. That's impressive. It's funny because I did my own remodel on my home, and I know Pella's doing a spotlight on our home actually next week. They're doing a video, and I think like 3 months later they rolled out with that Architect Series window. Now it's called the Reserve with the roll screen in the window, and I was like, "What? I didn't even know about this. I probably would have waited because it's that cool."
Yeah, there's some very cool things.
Yeah.